Hello to you all and good morning. It's 8:30 here in Johannesburg, and I spent some time negotiating how early I was going to come here outside to record something for you, for us. When I woke up this morning, something felt very different to the rest of the week. Things are feeling peaceful, not quite complete with the process, but peaceful nonetheless. I initially came outside with my coffee. It was freezing. So I went back inside, and then I opened my YouTube and came across Daniel's morning news. I'm going to link his video in the description box below. He's also in Johannesburg, and he actually catches the sunrise in his video. And it's about 5 minutes long, the one from this morning, but it really gave me the nudge to come out and record. And now I find myself at a really comfortable balance here at home between this morning, the birds outside, my coffee, and the fact that the rest of the house is still sleeping for now. The words that keep repeating in my mind today are, "We are going nowhere without forgiveness, my friend." I started looking through my notes from this past week, from last week, and realized that the video that I shared about a day ago didn't take into account a lot of other downloads that I'd written in my notes. Most probably because, the week was quite intense. And some of these things just flew out of my memory. I don't think that's a mistake. I think that I'm ready to go back to them. First, I want to share, before I get into these, that yesterday I came outside into the garden and found the weaver beginning to rebuild his nest, which was very sweet for me because I realized that, firstly, the weaver's still alive. I have no idea what birds do when wind is howling and when it's really bad. The wind here blew over 2 of our pot plants out here, so it was quite violent. But there's the weaver. He's rebuilding his nest. He knows how, he knows how to build a nest. And I suppose every nest is slightly different. But the point is that sometimes the wind will come and it will blow everything you know away. All your work away. But there's the knowledge of how to build remains. And the knowledge of why you build remains. And so for me, the weaver has reminded me, or I suppose yesterday taught me, that perhaps this wind that blew me over this past week came to also teach me that I'm ready to rebuild, that I'm ready to almost create from scratch, not necessarily build everything based on what I've created so far, but rather to just let my creativity fly and take me wherever it wants to go. Another thing I did yesterday, just while taking in the change of energy in the garden since the wind, is that I watered it. I walked around with the hose pipe, just watering all the plants, and I've never done that before. I've never watered a garden before. What I do is that I fill the bird bath with water so that the birds have, water to drink. I don't know where they drink water from generally, in the city, because the pools are full of chlorine, and I actually don't know, and it gets dry in winter. But I just love watering the garden. I mean, right now there's a little chick, a little grey lurry chick sitting in the bird bath, and so I like that the birds visit the garden. I like that they visit the garden, and I feel like they visit more since I sit here and since I leave water in the bird bath. And they definitely do build more because I've never seen their nests, and now they build nests in the garden. Anyway. No one told me how therapeutic it is to water a garden. It's like you walk around and you water the plants, and you can already feel the appreciation of the plant life and the birds for the freshness, because if it hasn't rained, they don't get that I want to say aromatic glow, that freshness, that smell that you get from the garden and nature just after the rain. Watering the garden almost brings that smell out, that aroma. Anyway, we are going nowhere without forgiveness, my friend. I had a dream last year. In this dream, things were intense last year. They were hectic. I want to say it felt like the driest season of my life in many ways. But I had this dream which filled me with so much hope and clarity around timing, and also clarity around why I find myself where I am right now. I was in a train station. The most beautiful trains parked in the station. But the one distinct thing about the station was that it was silent, it was spotless, it was so clean. It smelled like this train station has just been built. The trains sparkled as though they've also just been built. They were all parked, and it was also a very modern station. All of the screens, they were all off. They hadn't been switched on yet. And I was the only person in the station. The birds are going crazy. I love it. And what this dream told me was that there's no rush. Nothing's leaving. Everything is prepared. And it's so quiet and so peaceful here that you need to know that as soon as the train that you need to get on leaves or needs to leave, or when you need to get onto that train, you'll see the signs come on. You'll see them. There's no rush. And also, if there's any train station I ever want to find myself in, it's the one I was in that day. This morning, the vision of the train station returned, except it looked like a proper train station. It looked busy. It didn't smell clean. Train stations have a smell. And it was chaos, as usual. It was chaos. And I wasn't seeing myself feeling lost in this station. I just felt like we need to restore the peace of the train station. We need to quieten things down. And I feel like that's what I was doing as I was going back to my notes from this past week, just to see some of the stuff that I wrote. One of the things that I wrote was on the 9th of August, so that was last week Friday. So that's before the chaos. And I wrote this at around midday, which tells me it was just during the day, because I remember writing it, but what I remember thinking was, I don't really know what I'm talking about here. But I wrote it. And I also didn't know exactly where to search in the Bible for a reference, but I observed my lack of trust that what I've written is true. I observed it, okay? And what I wrote is, David wrote a song to his beloved God that crowned him. He wrote it before he became a true king, while dealing with sentiments of betrayal. His devotion lifted his soul. And then on the 11th, so that's 2 days after, around the same time of the day, I wrote a poem called The Beauty of Life. Nothing is wrong. Everything is as it should be. More could be done, and more is being done. What I think is what I become. So it's my thoughts that empower me to be, to see, to know who and how I came to be, what I am still to know, and all of which I already am, and in all of my idiosyncrasy. And I just want to note that I wrote these things before this chaos came alive. And then the following day, on the 12th of August, I wrote, the reason for the delay will be clear. It was so you could hear the song of David, the king, the voice of God. Not for everyone, not punishment, but for you to hear. And then I wrote, channeling directly into the audio without full understanding yet, which to me speaks about the trust that I need to nurture in myself to channel and to believe that the words come out the way they come out for a reason. I know I've said this so many times before, but this is a journey. It's a journey. The road to trust and self-trust is a journey. And it's designed that way. It's designed that way. You don't wake up one day full of faith. You don't wake up one day full of self-trust. That's just not how it works. It's as if you need to be dragged through the journey so that you know exactly how you got there. The other day I was talking to my mother. I think I've had this conversation twice in the past 2 weeks, and with my mom and someone else, where I was saying that, you know, I'm at the point in my life where if I woke up and someone swung me across the earth and I landed in the middle of Japan, and I don't know why I use Japan as an example, but if I found myself in Japan, I'd rebuild from there. And I have no doubt that I know how to rebuild, just like the bird with its new nest, or the new few threads that have started this new nest. And there's a beauty in that, in knowing that you were part of this process of remembering who you are. You were part of this process, and so that you learn, you know, like university, it's the university of life. You don't go there so that you can carry all your books around with you for the rest of your life. No, you go there so that you can learn how to learn. Learn how to apply yourself. Build confidence in yourself. Because to me, that's what a university degree is about. It's not about, it's not about the books themselves, the weight. And so I'm going to get into David and the idea and story, not story, but the idea of David and Saul. But what I realize about this past week, something that I hadn't planned for, is that this week has been about forgiveness. I know that because I had a dream. This dream. I hadn't been dreaming for a while. I had a dream that, I found myself in this, it was a tavern. I was at a tavern with an ex of mine, and for some bizarre reason we were back together. I cannot explain that. But I'll tell you something golden I got out of this dream, which makes it all worth it. The dream was not set in the past. It wasn't set in the future, because I know that's not the future. It was almost set with the current me. And, I was into this man. I was into him, which is why I know it's never going to happen, because no shade. But it was in the present moment, without any of the drama, without any of the fighting, without any of the animosity, and an understanding that all is forgiven and in the moment. And this is on the back of a lot of other things that I mentioned in the last video, a lot of other things, past relationships coming back to the surface inside me, almost for review and for shedding, for new clarity. And this process has left me lighter. So I was in this tavern, and there's music playing in the background. There are all these people that I used to know. Everyone is happy. They're like pool tables, and like there's like beautiful leather couches and like an outside balcony, and everyone is happy. I run into my sister. I give her a big hug. It's just, everything is just absolutely joyous, is how I'd put it. So I wake up from this dream, shocked at what happened in the dream, but also the song that was playing in the dream was still playing in my mind. The song was playing with such clarity. It was clear. I could hear the instruments, I could hear the melody, I could hear everything about the song, but I've never heard this song before. The song came to me in my dream. So there are no words in the song. It's music. It's instruments. It's a melody. There's drums. There's a beat, which I am so happy about, because I recorded it. There's just me and my voice, recorded the sound of the instruments, and so I never forget. And I describe what instruments it sounds like and everything, because God willing, one day I want this song produced. The song's name is Reunion. And I mean, even the name of the song just came. And for me, the idea of reunion is coming back together so as opposed to union, which is coming together. So this is reunion. So this is the idea of forgiveness within oneself, taking everything that you believe has gone wrong, all the things that you believe people have done wrong to you, bringing them back into you and thanking them for the lessons, shedding all the anger, the residual, the bitterness, all of those things that you thought you'd moved past, but clearly had not, because these things come back for review for a reason. There's still something left to be cleared. So maybe there's no more chaos in the world around the topic. Maybe there's no more noise in your head. But the most difficult part is the noise that remains in the heart. For me, I see myself as someone who doesn't go back to the past and harp on about things that people have done wrong to me. I don't do that. It doesn't serve my peace. But what's evident is that there's still a heart noise that remains. There are still certain hurts that remain. And the forgiveness of those is it's like you hold this thing and you're like, if anyone ever asks you to tell a story about that situation, you'll tell it, but I tell it in a very brief form to allow myself the room to not have to dive back into that energy. But again, it speaks of a fear of going back into that energy, which means it still exists. But for me to stand in this moment now, and instead of externalizing all of these events and the things that people have done. Rather, to accept them as a necessary part of becoming who I want to be. Because I know now, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that all of those things happened so that I can learn to be as resilient as I am and as powerful as I feel. And so I have a newfound respect for these experiences. I have a newfound respect for the souls that agreed to come here onto earth with me and to play the part of the villain. I see them now. I see them. And I believe that is what true forgiveness is. You know, in the Lord's Prayer, we speak about forgiveness, but it's like the Lord's Prayer just comes out of people's mouths so easily. I mean, I know this, but it's true that you can't ask for forgiveness. You can't attain forgiveness for yourself if you can't forgive others. You can't. And as long as you're carrying all these things that oppose forgiveness on your back, how would you fly? The bird rebuilding this nest, this bird is not thinking about the wind. This bird is not thinking about all the work it put in. The bird is building a nest. The bird is building a nest. That is all it's doing. It's tweeting and hanging off the branch, and it's building a nest. And so when I went back to this download about David, this tells me that there's a devotion that David had to God. And it's this devotion that pulled him through. I mean, I wrote here while dealing with sentiments of betrayal. So I didn't understand why the word betrayal even came up. And even when I was writing this, I was just writing it, not understanding that these sentiments of betrayal needed to come back up to the surface to be shed, to be shedded, whatever the word is right now, so that my soul can be lifted. And so as I was going through this, because this morning I also came across a video, and she speaks about Psalm 21. So she takes you to the Song of David. That's actually what reminded me that I wrote this last week. And so I thought, let's look up the metaphysical meaning of David. This is again from Truth Unity. I would have gone to the actual psalm itself, but the Song of David is a lengthy one. And what I wanted rather to do is read this, which I found to be perfectly appropriate. David, beloved, loved, well beloved, youngest son of Jesse the Bethlehemite, he was anointed king of Israel in Saul's stead, and he succeeded Saul as king. You know, when they speak of Saul here, because this website is almost like a dictionary for all these Bible words, and I love it for that. I do love to read a verse, but I love to read this because it draws the essence and the symbolism of the character or the figure to help you to apply it. It helps me to apply it to the lesson. It says here, Saul, the first king of Israel, represents the will functioning in the limitations of personality. The will should be anointed or inspired by judgment, but in its development, it often asserts its own initiative and is thereby defeated in its leadership. And so David is love, and Saul is the mind. or I could say the thinking mind. And so the thinking mind rules. The thinking mind rules, but is essentially overthrown by love, defeated by love. It says here, David is often referred to as a type of Christ. His life was a forerunner of that of the more perfect man, Jesus Christ, who was of the house of David. David represents divine love, individualized in human consciousness. Love in being, God, is the idea of perfect unity in all existence. When the divine idea is focused in man, it is the Christ love on its inner side and the Jesus love on its outer. When David in his youth and purity daily communed with God, he closely reflected divine love. When he developed his human character as a king in dominion over men, he manifested the limitations of the human in larger degree. The rulership is withdrawn from the head, or the will, King Saul, and is gradually transferred to the heart, or love, King David. David was spiritually anointed by Samuel long before he assumed the reins of government. Saul became melancholic and at times insane. Because of David's skill on the harp, he was summoned at the suggestion of Saul's attendants for the purpose of soothing Saul with music. He at once won the affection of Saul, and his music proved so effective in quieting the frenzied monarch that he was sent for often. This illustrates the power of love to harmonize the discords set up by a willful, violent consciousness. David's father was Jesse, whose name means Jah, is, and represents eternal existence, I am. Thus, Jesse relates to Jesus the Christ. His home was in Bethlehem, the house of bread, which symbolizes the substance center in the body. Saul was rejected as king because he was egotistical and disobedient, and David was selected in his stead on account of his modesty and his childlike obedience and simplicity. This whole lesson in 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 4 to 13, points to the heart as the center through which spirit rules, and to love, David, as the ruling intelligence, or king. Jehovah looketh on the heart. David was ruddy, red. He was a shepherd, a keeper of the natural animal forces. These symbols all describe the subconscious life energies centering about the heart. God is love, and his kingdom is within you. Within is not an abstraction, but a definite place in the interior or subconscious realms of mind and body. When you find that your willful rule, Saul, is not proving harmonious, call upon the Spirit of the Lord for his anointing. You will receive the baptism of Spirit if you are sincere in your asking, and this spiritual anointing will prove to be the first step in setting up a new reign in which love will be king. What's interesting here is that as I was searching for Psalm 21, I Googled Psalm 21 metaphysical meaning, and it kept pulling out Matthew 21. And so here we are at Matthew chapter 21, verse 1 to 11. And so instead of reading the actual verse, I'm going to read what they've shared here, which is a piece prepared by a Mary May Ush. I don't know if I've pronounced that correctly, but I'll leave the link to this below as well, titled How to Honor the Christ. So she basically explains the story that's being told in this extract. It was on the Sunday preceding the first Easter, but neither the words Palm Sunday nor Easter were yet part of men's vocabulary. As Jesus and his disciples neared the village of Bethphage, Jesus sent two of them on an errand. They were to go into the village and bring to him an ass and her colt, which they would find there. If questioned, they were to say that Jesus had need of the animals. It was considered an honor to lend an animal to be ridden by a holy man. Jesus explained that he would ride into Jerusalem, thus fulfilling a prophecy made years earlier. When the animals were obtained, disciples spread some of their clothing on the colt's back, and Jesus rode him. As the group neared Jerusalem, a great crowd of people hailed Jesus as their king. Some of them had been present when Lazarus was raised from the dead. Many had seen or heard of the wondrous healings and other miracles Jesus had performed. Probably some had heard it rumored that Jesus was the long-awaited Messiah or Savior promised to the people. So a multitude paid tribute to him by spreading their outer garments in his path, and by waving palm branches and placing them on the road before him. There were shouts of Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. As Jesus entered the city amid shouts of praise, men at the edge of the crowd questioned who this new hero was, and they were told he was Jesus, a prophet from Nazareth of Galilee. Our practical application. At some time, most of us have been part of a crowd that welcomed a great hero, paid tribute to a notable public figure, or cheered a championship team. Remembering the eager acclaim and enthusiasm that marked such an occasion, we have a vague idea of the spirit in which Jesus was welcomed into Jerusalem on that first Palm Sunday. The people had hoped for a leader who would set them free from the oppression of the Romans, an earthly king who would make possible a better, more prosperous way of life. The people believed they had found such a person in Jesus. Thus, they hailed him as their king. Certainly, Jesus' life and teachings do show the way to freedom and happiness and prosperity. But Jesus had no intention of becoming an earthly king, and most of the people were not yet capable of understanding the spiritual kingdom in which the Christ is ruler. Today, when we hail Jesus Christ as King, let us know that our praise is not only in memory of a man named Jesus, but also in honor of the Christ Spirit that ruled in Jesus and should rule now in all our minds and hearts. We honor the Christ. When we remember that we are spiritual beings, children of God, capable of developing and expressing all the qualities of the Father. When we control our thoughts, desires, words, and emotions, keeping them always constructive. When we strive toward any high goal, confident that God works through us for attainment. When we see the Christ potential in others and praise and encourage their commendable traits and efforts. When we refuse to accept disease or affliction and know that God manifests through us life and health. When we think in terms of you and we more often than in terms of I, me, and mine. When we overcome fear with faith, hatred with love, ignorance with God-directed wisdom. When we master unworthy desires and lowly impulses and discipline ourselves to think and act wisely. When we live each day in a spirit of love, forgiveness, and generosity. When we pray regularly for the light of understanding and let that light radiate through all our affairs to bless our world. When we have faith in the goodness of God, faith in ourselves, and faith in our fellow man. You know, there was so much that happened this week. I pulled a card from the Rumi Oracle deck. I pulled this card just during that time where I felt I needed some form of an answer to understand why I was feeling the way I was feeling. And I pulled the card Layla, which reminded me literally so much of why I do this and that I do it for love. Put aside your clever schemes, O lover, be mindless, become mad, dive into the heart of the flame, become fearless, be like a moth. Turn away from the self and tear down the house, then come and dwell in the house of love. Be a lover, live with lovers. Clean your chest from all hostility, wash it 7 times, then fill it with the wine of love. Be a chalice for love, be a chalice. You must be all love to be worthy of the beloved. When going to the gathering of drunks, be a drunk, become drunk. your thought takes a course, dragging you in its wake. Move beyond thought. Let your heart lead. Be the leader. When the grace of love is revealed, be a mirror to reflect it. When the beloved's hair is loosened, brush it like a comb. Be a comb. Rumi. How I long for my thoughts to no longer make any sense to me. Then I can be rid of them, like noisy house guests who have overstayed their welcome. Oh, the peace when they finally go. Their incessant chatter brings me no comfort. I crave the silence of you. Will you let me hear it? Will you run through the noisy house of my mind with your great muddy feet so that I can focus on something other than my mind for a while? Maybe you can make such a mess that I shall give up my plans and attempts at order completely. Just give in for a change. It's time for that, to give up my ridiculous fantasies of perfection. Useless, noisy, irritating, demanding, and yet deadening perfection. I'd rather just be alive. I want to plant my head in the earth, in the same mud that sticks to your feet, and breathe in her rich soil smell. I want to feel her heart beating in the quiet movements of the roots of the plants as they stretch and grab and stop my ears with her fertile dirt, finally gaining peace from the constant infernal racket of thoughts no longer wanted. Oh, beloved, how you are to be envied. You are being given the gift of no self, no noise, no sense. The great beloved truly wants you to be closer than ever to the wild universal heart. In that field of love, every electronic device goes haywire, systems collapse, worlds collide, and great stars are born from the chaos. But the real you will sense none of this. You'll be staring at your beloved, so intoxicated by love, your tongue will loll out of your mouth, and you'll drool like a bloodhound, and you won't care a hoot, neither will the great beloved. Such will the passion of your reunion be, that the only thing to matter will be the one great love exploding inside your being. So who cares if you have no idea what day it is? What was your job supposed to be again? Or how to make conversation, let alone intelligent conversation, at the dinner table? Oh well, you shall not be yourself anymore. You shall not be so appropriate or sociable. Who understands crazy words that fall out of your mouth, unchecked by logic or rationality? I do. I know the beloved too. I am under that same loving spell. I, like you, have no I anymore. I, like you, am so crazy with love that I care not for things making sense anymore. I, like you, long for my night of love with the great beloved that ends me forever and renders me only and ever the lover of the great beloved. I call that night forward from my love-crazed heart, as do you, that Laylat al-Qadr, the night of destiny. Let us run together and pound on the bedroom door of the great beloved. There is no shame. There is nothing else worth holding on to. Let us go now and throw ourselves upon the goodwill of the Creator. Our hair shall be messy and mingle with the curving galaxy, and the planets shall grow rings around them, becoming the many eyes of the great beloved, delightfully bearing witness to our loving, passionate surrender. This oracle brings you a message. You are moving through a period of not knowing, of time in the great void or womb of the Divine Mother. It is in this place the seed can crack open and take root. This cannot happen in the light, where all is seen and recognized. It must happen in the cover of darkness, where only trust can assure one of success. This is the way of nature, the way of life, and it must be honored. This oracle brings you ancient wisdom. It guides you, not to fear the darkness, but to enter into it willingly. It is not for you to become lost, but to find your way. This oracle is saying that in the darkness, there is the path, da tariki tarikat. Do not turn away from it. Let it be. Be with the lack of knowing. When people ask of you so many questions and demand sensible answers to support their notion of reality, do not bow to such unworthiness and fear. Know that their minds may be fearful for your safety and their own, lest your divine madness be contagious. But that their fear is nothing to you, nothing at all. It is not even anything to them, but they just don't know that yet. Under the sacred black cloak of night, the Divine Mother, the Goddess, she who transfigures from darkness into the light, has invited you into her chamber. In that place you shall experience annihilation, but only that of which is untrue, that of which would hold you back, dampen your spirit, or prevent you from bursting into full aliveness. For that which is true is already seated deep in her womb, and is preparing to be born, strong and with good, powerful legs. So when it is time, it will leap like a wild creature, all instinct and intuition, into the morning light. For this moment, however, there is darkness, and that is essential for the appearance, so imminent, beloved, of the light on its way. This oracle brings you guidance. If you find yourself to be sad, to be grieving, whether you know for what or not, or even depressed or struggling, feeling as though you are being pulled down, do not fight. Bear witness instead. Allow what is taking place to take place. Allow what is happening to happen. You shall find joy in allowing the interplay of darkness and the light to take place according to a greater unfolding rhythm of your own divine growth process. And so I'm going to wrap this up because I now understand what this process has been about. This slowing down, this dragging of my soul so that I can witness the reasons why I shed what I need to shed at this point in my life. Now that I've learned how to hear the voice of the Holy Spirit, now that I know how guided I am, now that I know how beautiful it feels to live in God's love, and why it's important for me to honor the betrayals that I've witnessed in my life. And the reason for this is so that I can rise lighter. There is no rising without forgiveness. And with all these feelings, yes, I acknowledge they lie dormant. They lie dormant in the heart. I find myself not necessarily conscious of them. But this week I was made conscious of them. And the weight that they carry, the weight I carry because of them, that's the weight that holds the doubt. That's the weight that holds the doubt that doesn't allow me to completely immerse myself in God's love, recklessly immerse myself in God's love. And with that, I remind you of the message of the Song of David. And I remind you that we do it for love. And I remind you that without forgiveness, we are going nowhere, my friend. Sending you love.